Luka Doncic just had one of the most impressive games in NBA history, dropping the first ever 60-20-10 game. Impressive by itself, but considering how he closed the game, it truly will go down in history. After performances like that, you can't help but think about what his future holds. This has felt like an impending situation for quite a while now, but I think it's time to talk about what's going on with the Mavericks and the future of Luka Doncic. If you guys like the content, smash the like and sub button. Let's go for 7 likes on today's video, and let's get into this. Now, I actually think a lot of the reasons why it appears the Mavericks have such a mediocre future ahead trace back to what is clearly the best part of this franchise currently, and that is Luka Doncic. The Mavericks had a very unique transition as they went from trying to put together competitive rosters year in and year out, given the presence of their aging superstar, Dirk Nowitzki, to him retiring, the Mavericks finally embracing the rebuild, and just when it was getting started, managed to land one of the greatest prospects of our generation, Luka Doncic, a selection that practically took them out of a rebuild overnight. To get an idea of what I really mean here, before Luka Doncic, the Mavericks had made a singular lottery selection this century, that being Dennis Smith Jr. Year after they drafted Luka Doncic, the Mavericks took whatever little assets they had, and they traded for Kristaps Porzingis, a move that didn't quite work out as expected, and he was eventually traded once again for a package headlined by Spencer Dinwiddie. Then this past season, Luka got what felt like his real first co-star with the emergence of Jalen Brunson, just for them to lose him for nothing in this past free agency. So now the Mavericks stare at a situation with one of the best players in the world, if not the best player in the world, a player that's only 23 years old, averaging 33 points, 8 rebounds and 9 assists, on the best efficiency of his career, shooting 50% from the field and 36% from 3. He's quite possibly the most valuable player in the entire league, but what's around him is rather concerning. Now, the team did make a very solid trade this offseason, managing to bring in forward Christian Wood from the Rockets, a player that this year is averaging 17 points and 8 rebounds on great efficiency, but as things stand right now, he's an expiring contract. Now, this could change rather soon, as he is eligible for a 4-year, $77 million extension. If I'm the Mavericks, I'm trying to get the pen on paper as soon as possible. This team can just flat out not afford to lose their second best player in back-to-back free agencies. But most reports right now suggest that negotiations haven't gone great, and if that continues, the Mavericks might be looking to move him ahead of the deadline. Now, taking a look at the rest of the roster, there's Spencer Dinwiddie, a solid player no doubt, averaging 16 and 5 on great splits, but he's 29 years old with just another year on his contract that pays him a whopping $20 million, giving him close to neutral trade value and making him far from a key part of this team's future. They've got Tim Hardaway Jr., someone that's getting $16 million 2 seasons from now, but it feels like injuries are catching up, as he's currently averaging 13 points, shooting just 38% from the field. They've got some solid rotation pieces like Max Kleber and Dorian Finney-Smith, both of which are far from underpaid. They're also sitting on one of the worst contracts in the league in Davis Bertans, a player that's getting 9 minutes a game and getting $16 million 2 years from now. Their only real young talent to speak of are Josh Green, who's been okay but far from looking like the future running mate to Luka Doncic, and their recent second-round selection, Jaden Hardy, who, yes, at one point was a top recruit in the country, has tore up at the G League this season, but hasn't looked great on the main roster, and despite the G League success, wouldn't carry too much weight in a trade. The team right now is 22-16, good enough for the 4th seed in the Western Conference. They're in the middle of a 7-game win streak, so this might feel like a weird time to be questioning this team's upside, but barring a huge change, it really feels like this is what we can expect from the Mavericks for the foreseeable future. The 4th to 7th seed in the West, on the back of Luka Doncic, a team that's scary to go up against in the playoffs, with Luka's ability to single-handedly take down a series, but a team without the firepower to make a serious run. Something that's just sad to see as a fan of the game. I don't think anyone wants to see Luka's career go to waste. It's one thing for it to happen to a guy like Bradley Beal. Luka is in a whole nother conversation. But going back to what I was saying earlier, I really think the Mavericks' immediate transition hurt them. I think the best case scenario is something like we saw with the Bucks. Giannis' success didn't come overnight, but they found a diamond in the rough with Chris Middleton, something no team could plan for. They pulled off the trade for Drew Holiday, and they made one of the best free agency signings in recent memory, getting Brook Lopez. All these moves formed their championship core in the group we know today. But this isn't common. The Cleveland Cavaliers were able to draft Evan Mobley and Darius Garland with top picks, then trade for Donovan Mitchell without giving up either of those two. Devin Booker was part of a Suns team that lived at the bottom of the league, allowing them to bring in top guys like DeAndre Ayton, Mikal Bridges, and Cam Johnson, setting themselves up for a trade that would push them over the edge. In their case, it was Chris Paul. The Nuggets were able to get top picks that became Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. to put alongside Nikola Jokic. The Grizzlies with Jaren Jackson, John Morant, and Desmond Bane. The Celtics with Smart, Tatum, Brown. The Pelicans are a team that did build a lot of their core through trades, but are in an extremely unique scenario, trading their franchise superstar Anthony Davis and landing the #1 overall pick in the same offseason. Almost every single team with a young face of their franchise was able to be active around the draft at the time of finding their star. The only scenario that looks somewhat similar is probably the Hornets, but they're a team that still sucks, currently sitting with one of the worst records in the league, likely to be getting a top pick in the loaded upcoming draft. That's not going to be happening with the Mavericks. So what do? Let's start by taking a look at their assets. Right now, their first round pick in the upcoming draft is going to be headed to the Knicks, assuming they stay outside of the top 10, which looks like it's going to be the case. Not a great start, but they do hold the rest of their first rounders. Then there's their player assets, which, well, as we said earlier, there's just not much to speak of. Christian Wood, as we said, is an expiring deal, and as of right now, it's looking more and more likely he could get moved at the deadline, but what can they really expect to get for him? He isn't going to be a restricted free agent. Whatever team he's going to only has him locked up for the rest of the season, so I really wouldn't expect more than a projected late first round pick. Almost the entire rest of this roster are players that really wouldn't move the needle for other teams and are already getting at least fairly compensated. So unless someone like Josh Green or Jaden Hardy breaks down into someone that the rest of the league is scratching and clawing for, I struggle to see how they're going to manage to make a massive splash. Just recently, we're seeing all this buzz about a possible Trae Young trade, and we've even seen Las Vegas odds that came out where they have the Dallas Mavericks as the favorite to land him. But unless the Hawks are fine with Dinwiddie, Jaden Hardy, and a million first round picks that are all going to be projected to be in the middle of the first round, I just don't see how the Mavericks could be the favorite to land any player the caliber of someone like Trae Young. Now, even if they did pull this off, I'm just not confident it would really work out, and well, that's for pretty obvious reasons. Two ball-dominant guards with every intent of being the closer. You would have to assume there would be some serious offensive hurdles, then obviously, it would just add to the defensive question marks this team already has. To be perfectly honest, there's just not many players in the league that'd be a less seamless fit. But with all that said, as the options dwindle, while I just poked as many holes as I could into this trade, I actually think the Mavericks' hand might be forced into making a deal like this. Now, what I think is truly scary when it comes to a Mavericks trade like this is that it's probably it. It didn't work out with Kristaps. If they end up making a significant move and it doesn't work, this team is going to have little to nothing to fall back on. But let's continue to see how this maybe could work out. Maybe it's free agency where things go better. Once again though, at first glance, things don't look great. Assuming a Christian Wood extension, they're going to be way over the cap, meaning their only possibilities really come from pulling off a sign-and trade. But who's even out there? You've got James Harden, who all signs point to staying in Philly, or maybe possibly returning to Houston. Chris Middleton, who could very well have an extension before we even hit the offseason. There's Kyrie Irving, but we all know it's a waste of time to try to predict what's going on with him. Now, there actually is a significant amount of free agents. There's guys like Fred VanVleet, Draymond Green, and D'Angelo Russell, but really none that it feels like would transform the future ahead for the Mavericks. In fact, it really feels like free agency as we know it is slowly dying. More and more of the top names are avoiding free agency entirely and seeking the trade market to try and find a new home. So I really don't think it's going to be in free agency where the Mavericks make their big move. Now, at the end of the day, it's hard to be too upset having one of the best and likely the most valuable player in the league. But due to a unique timeline that left the team with little to no young talent and few options to escape top-end mediocrity, I think they face a strong chance Luka eventually looks for a trade, as it's been extremely clear since he got to the league, there's few things in life that motivate him more than winning. Now, in the event, you could probably count on your hand how many teams could even remotely make a competitive offer. Right now, the only teams that come to mind are the Thunder, Pelicans, and maybe the team that holds the #1 pick in the upcoming draft. Man, would the NBA community be absolutely turned on its head. For the sake of Mavericks fans, I hope he doesn't get traded, but as every game that goes by, it does feel like something drastic is going to happen in Dallas. Maybe it's Trae Young, but maybe it is Luka Doncic. But that's the video, guys. You guys tell me your thoughts in the comments below. If you liked the video, smash the like and sub button, and I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.